All right, so let's keep moving, and now let's do something very interesting. Now, in this course, we actually created a web app and we pulled information from uh, like a server, right? Now, there we have explained and the anatomy of a web application or a mobile application, but I'm going to go ahead and do that again here. So the standard web application or a mobile application that you see, this is basically how it is, right? So I'm trying to explain web app, different layers, JSON, all in one, okay? And we have explained JSON in detail in that HTML course also. So if you want, go and check that there, right? But here also we'll explain. So let's say here is your UI, which is loaded on your desktop, in a browser, or in a mobile application or a mobile browser, right? So let's say I want to add this person, right? So I'm going to go ahead and create the data. This is one John and John at gmail.com and send a post HTTP request. And we're going to see this later, okay? And send it over to this API server, which then goes ahead and persists it into the database, right? Then if you want to fetch that information, we search with an ID1, create a HTTP GET request, and then send that request here, which then pulls it from the API server, pulls it from the database, and then sends it back. And notice this is JSON, right? Which is basically name, and curly braces, right? And there are arrays and other things in there, but by and large, it's a simple data format. You can go and check the HTML CSS course for a little bit more details, right? And then this data gets rendered here into a table, right? And that's how most of the applications work. You have update, delete functionalities as well. But yeah, that's basically what we are trying to do next. Okay. All right. Okay, so now basically what we are trying to build is this API server and the application in general to do these actions. Okay, so let's kind of go ahead and try to build that. Okay. All right, so the next thing that we are going to do is we're going to go ahead and actually build it right now. We use a PyTZ module earlier, right? But next we want to actually use a module called as Flask, which helps us build sort of API endpoints. Again, what is an API? API endpoint. Maybe you can go and check here. There I've explained a little bit better, but in the presentation earlier, it's basically what deals with the permanent storage and the UI, right? So let's go ahead in this context, basically. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually create a new project or new folder here. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and uh, come here and then create a folder, right? I could do mkdir also, but we're gonna say flask underscore demo, right? And here now again we can use requirements.txt or uv, whatever is your uh, whatever you want, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and actually create a requirements.txt. And since we need a module called as Flask, let's go ahead and add that, right? So I'm going to go ahead and say I want Flask, right? Which is good. And then let's go ahead and actually write our app.py here, right? App.py. Okay. And let's go one by one. All right. So let's go ahead and create like a simple demo. And so for that, I'm going to go cd dot dot cd again. If you are not very confident about Linux commands, right? Please take this course. Okay, 1 hour around that, right? And again, I'm going to say create the environment and basically, you know, activate it like what we learned in the just previously, right? So I'm going to do that. I'm going to say Python minus mv dot v, right? And then once that gets created, let's go ahead and activate that. So the command for that is vnv bin activate, and then pip install minus r requirements.txt. This is all we have done previously. I think I misspelled it. So install, there we go. It installs Flask and other required modules. Now we are all set. Okay. So let's go ahead and actually now write some code here, and I'm just gonna go ahead and paste it, and I'm gonna explain to you what's going on. It's very straight and simple, right? So let's see what's happening here, right? So let's understand. So here we are saying from Flask import Flask, right? And then we are creating an application, and then we're creating a decorator and saying, okay, if anything hits our web server at this point, right, just take the input and then say hello to them, right? And that's really what we're doing here. So let's go ahead and actually run this. Okay, so I'm gonna clear this and I'm gonna say python app.py. Okay, so there we go. This is running on port 3000. Now this is not our local development server, right? So we can't really go to the port 3000 directly, but what we can do, okay, is go here, do the web preview, change the port to 3000, okay, and change in preview. Now notice that it says not found. The reason for that is we are going to this slash hello slash one, right? So let's go ahead and actually remove this one and say slash hello and name, let's say Nikhil, okay, and then enter. So notice hello to Nikhil from Flask application. So notice what we have right here is an actual running application, right? And then initially it was 404 because that page was not found. And then later it's HTTP code 200 and we actually said hello to the user. So Flask is used to create this kind of middlewares or API servers, right? And then we're going to make this even better now. So now what we're going to do is we actually want to send some employee information. So we actually in the previous course, right, this course, we actually created an HTML file to fetch some data from, um, from I think this. Let me see if it is this one. Yeah, from here, and do check that video actually or set of videos in that course, and we were able to fetch it and show it in the UI, right? This time we are actually going to build this kind of API ourselves with Flask, right? So let's go ahead and do that. So for that I'm going to create like a model class called employee, because employees is what we are going to send and receive back. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to create an employee here, right? So let's go ahead and create a file called employee. And then we already learned object orientation, so this should be straightforward for you. So notice what we have is this is an employee class employee. It's constructor which takes employee ID, name, and salary, right? And then it has basically also the employee count, right? And really that's that. Okay, that's all there is to it. Okay, excellent. And then we just add this. So if you want to test it, you can test it this way, right? So what we can do is let's close this, right? Control C, clear, and we can say Python employee.py. Notice it prints name John, ID 1, salary. So this, but we actually want to use this in a different program, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and create that. Okay. So let's do that. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and actually uh, create that. So let's call it uh, maybe employee app.py. Okay, so this is a new middleware that we want to create. I'm going to paste some code and I'm going to explain what that code is doing. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so what's happening here? Okay, so again the imports, right? This is another module that we imported, and then we have imported our employee, right? You can click it and go back, right? So there we are. I created the app just like before, and we have created two employees, right? Again, we have instantiated that employee class. Again, we have already learned this in this course itself, right? Classes and objects, right? And then what we have done is for simplicity, we have added those into this dictionary, right? Like this. So we created a list of employees and then the list of employees in a dictionary format, and we ran underscore underscore dict on top of it so that these objects are converted into dictionary, right? Now, if we say at employees or for all employees, we're gonna send the entire employees back, right? If we search with a particular employee, right, it's gonna search in the employee list, match if there is, and this is actually will be done over a database, but we don't want to actually create a database. We just gonna work with employees that are already here, right? And maybe we'll add some, right? So what it does is for it goes through, and again we have done the for loop, right? It goes through the list of employees. If the employee ID matches the employee ID that was sent, just like hello, right? Hello Nikhil when we sent here, right? So we'll be sending employee ID. If it matches the employee ID, is gonna return that dictionary, and then to send it in like a in a format which can be shown or sent over the wire, we need to call this function on top, right? Which is also imported here, right? Then again, don't need to understand everything of everything, okay, but at least know the system, right? As the creator of Node.js, right, says that you don't need to understand everything of everything, but you need to understand like the system, right? And that's what I'm trying to explain to you. Excellent. So that's what is happening. This is one route. There's another route where we accept a post request to add an employee, right? And it basically then creates an employee right into that, and let's check what it takes, like employee ID, name, and that, right? So that's awesome, right? And also notice here is a class variable which counts the number of employees. Nevertheless, okay, so coming back here, here we are. Yeah, so now next up what we are doing is creating the employee, then into the employee list we are appending this. Again, we learned this, right? Notice whatever we learned is going to be very, very useful. So we learned the append function um, on the list, right? So we added that, and we also added it to the list of like dictionary of employee. Like we are trying, this is the dictionary version of the same employee basically, right? It makes it easy to send and receive, right? And then that's it. We respond with a new employee, and really that's that. And then if and this we want to kind of create based on our knowledge from this course, which is here, this course, we want to actually create and test this index.html, right? And then we'll do that subsequently, but let's test our API whether that works or not, right? At least to get the employees and getting a particular employee, right? Post, maybe we'll do it with the UI. Okay, so again, let's now run Python emp app.py. So notice it's running. Let's go to the here web preview and port this. Again, nothing will be found because nothing is there here, and we didn't really create the index.html, right? So let's go ahead and go to working sort of an API. So let's go here and say, okay, I want to go to this one. And now notice we are actually getting employees back, right? So there were two employees that we kind of hard coded or created initially, and we are able to get them back. We could also try to get a particular employee back based on the employee ID, right? So here, so let's try to do that. Okay, so I'm going to say one, and there is an error. So function either return none or whatever. So looks like, yeah, so let's fix this. Okay, okay, so what seems to have happened is that it didn't really get an actual employee because our employee IDs are like 100 and 101. Okay, ideally we should do like a error handling for this, and we know how to do error handling with try except. We didn't do that to keep things simple. So let's go ahead and say 100, right? So let's do that 100. So notice we get the 100th employee, maybe 101. Here we go. So seems like our API is working, right? So next step, I'm going to go ahead and add the index.html and come back. I'm going to explain to you, but it would be awesome if you have taken this free course, right? And you would understand this even better. All right, so we are back, and then we've added this folder called static, and within that we have added the index.html, and this one, our employee app.py actually already knows how to send it back, right? On when we just call this URL. So let's test it now. So I'm going to go ahead. It's already running. Okay, so let's web preview, and I'm going to explain this HTML to you later, right? And I've added this user a little bit when I was testing earlier, a little bit earlier, right? So let's go ahead and search for a particular employee, search ID. So this is and let's bring up our uh, developer console. Again, we learned about the developer console here. Okay, so it's basically you can use uh, Control Shift I, or you can go here, more tools, or I don't know how, not here, but you can go here, go to more tools and bring this developer tools, right? So let's go here, more tools, developer tools, right? Yeah, so here we have it. Okay, so let's see what happens when I say search, right? So notice a request is going, and let us see what's the request saying employees 100, right? And then response is this one. All right, so let's add a new employee. So I'm gonna do show all. So we have James, Jessica, Jamie, and let's say Javier, right? So let's say Javier, Javier, and we're gonna say salary is 10,000 also. So add employee. Notice that it says employees added, and now if you see here, what has happened is this actually sent a post request, right? Not here, actually here, the post request, and the payload was Javier and this details, and it actually incremented to 103, and we got it, and then we got a response back of the same employee, and then we fetched all the employees, which we do anyways, right? So that's how what we have done is we have created an API that we saw in the presentation earlier, and then we added a front end in front of it. Now let's understand this front end. Okay, now if you have already seen this or taken this course, this will be very straightforward for you, but nevertheless I'm still going to explain everything. But I recommended it that you should take a look at that course. Okay, so what we have done here is this is HTML, and we've learned this all in this course. Okay, so do check it out. Not very complicated, but yeah, you should know this. So yeah, we've used some custom one, right? But that's not really needed. You could use it if you want, or you can take it away. It's not gonna change change a lot. You could just use this uh, Bootstrap CSS, right? Like we have used previously. So now let's check one by one, right? So this is employee directory, right? This is employee directory, H2 class, already learned it, MB4, which means margin below 4, right? These are all Bootstrap classes. Now, essentially what we are doing is we have these two buttons, search ID and show all. So they call different functions, and we're gonna get to those. But let's go through the UI really quickly. Then we have this add new employee, which takes name and salary. Notice the name and the salary, right? And then here, right, placeholder name, and then salary, and then add employee, right? There's an add employee button here, right? There we go. And then we have the table which shows ID, name, and salary, right? That's that. Then basically, if we scroll down, what we are doing here is we are trying to fill the table. So we are showing, okay, we are going to the slash employees, right? And then we've taken the table body. Again, this is really well explained here. So, but I'm still trying to explain it as much as I can. So basically, you should know a little bit of HTML here, right? So what we are doing is we are trying to fill that T body with all the data that is coming from the backend, right? Essentially, now let's look at the function get all employees, which is called from here, right? So basically what we're doing here very simply is just call the API base, which is slash employees, but behind that will be the URI of our server, right? If it were localhost, it would be localhost, but here in this case, it is this one. Then basically what it does is brings the data and then calls another function to render rows, which is basically, let's if you go down, what it does is it gets all that the data from the backend, and then creates this table row with data as ID, name, and salary, right? So for example, if we go back here and then say show all, right, it makes a date call and the response is like this, right? EMP ID, name, and salary, and then it's a JSON array. So what it's doing is it's going through this JSON array, right? And then just filling that data into the table data cells, right? So it's basically filling up these cells, right? That's what it is doing. Next up, and also like check this table, right? It has table hoover class and table bordered, right? We saw the table bordered class earlier, but table hoover is like it's just does this, right? Just does this. So it does like basically kind of soft highlighting. Excellent. So coming back to the function again, so it renders the rows pretty straightforward. Then we have get one employee, which is basically, if you see, it takes the API base and adds the ID that we got from the, again, using the get element by ID function, right? Which we have also learned here, by the way, right? Uh, and we could actually, so for example, we can say 105, something like this, and notice we get an error saying employee not found, right? So that code basically is this code basically runs and prints an alert. Adding employee, again, what we are doing is we are calling the post method, but in this case, we are adding the data from right document.get element ID, new name and new salary, which are basically these fields, right? And then it just goes ahead and posts that data, and then when the response comes back, it just converts it to JSON. Really doesn't do like anything. It actually does like once it gets back, it converts it into JSON, and then it alerts employee added, and then it calls the get employees function again, right? But it doesn't really do anything with the data itself like that comes back, right? It just calls the get all employees function again. It also calls this function on loading of the employees, right? Or loading of this window, loading of this UI, right? And that's why if we refresh, notice always it gets these details, right? And then that's really that. Yeah, so we get all the employees on the refresh also, right? So it's pretty interesting. And yeah, again, script tag, body tag, HTML tag, done, right? And then again, you can go and check this course to know a little bit more. Again, these essential courses, I've tried to keep them within 1 to 2 hours so that you can get ready and just get to the courses that you need for jobs, right? These are obviously are the courses that are going to enable you for those courses, right? All right, so excellent. So what we have done here is we have used the uh, Flask package and built basically, and this code will all be available to you in the course somewhere. I'll have it a link for you guys, right? And we have built a middleware. We also built a UI in front of it, and I just explained how that works. And then we have hooked up our UI with the like we've hooked up this employee app and the UI, right? And then again, Control J, we're gonna Control C out of here, right? So let's go ahead and do that, right? And again, the data is stored in memory. So for example, if we run this again, we are not really storing this in a database or anything, right? So if we refresh now, we should only get like 2 employees that we add at the initial part of this file, right? That's that really. Okay. So excellent. All right. So I think we have learned a lot in this lesson as well. Let's do a quick recap of what we learned. We basically took our knowledge of packages and modules. We now know there's a module called as Flask, which can be used, or package called as Flask, which can be used to actually create middlewares and run our application servers, right? And then what we did was we created a model object, right, that is used by this application. Or in fact, before that, we created a very simple hello kind of an app, right, where we just understood this is the route, and we can actually say hello to whoever, whatever is said here, right? Very simple Flask, 11 lines application, very simple one, right? Then we made it a little complicated or a little bit more functional for our use case where we had created an employee dictionary application backend, and then we added a front end to it. We also went through an error and fixed it, right? In fact, we didn't really fix the error, we fixed the data, but yeah, you can actually try to do the try except blocks here. So everything we learned in all the parts of this course actually came together, and we were actually uh, able to identify with whatever we learned earlier, like creating these objects, creating or adding, appending to a list, right? Things like that, um, right? And then also returning a tuple, right? We've seen that, and then things like that, right? So yeah, and then of course, if you had taken this course, right, another small free course, right, you would know how the UI was created as well, even though I've explained it already, right? There, I've explained it step by step, right, from HTML to CSS to JavaScript. Excellent. So that completes this particular lesson. And then later on, we are going to summarize all that we learned in the Essential Python course. And yes, we have not done everything, but this is good enough for you to get started with other courses. And also, this should give you a good foundational Python knowledge, good practical knowledge, again, within 1 hour or two. And just imagine if you put few more hours or few days, how much you'll actually end up learning. This is really a good solid foundation that you have now. Okay, so we're going to summarize everything that we learned in this course in the next lesson. All right, thank you.